Good morning, KOTA territory. Welcome to the KOTA Now Desk, and welcome to our very second ever Between the Lines book club. I'm so glad you joined us this morning. My name is Herrick. This is Chloe White, and this month we are talking about Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. So before we jump in, I just want to check in, I guess, and see what were you feeling initially going into this book?
To be honest, I didn't really want to read it.
Really? Not a Brandon Sanderson girl.
I'm torn on Brandon Sanderson as a whole, but it just didn't seem like the kind of book I'd really enjoy. So I was a bit hesitant, but I was like, well, Mimi doesn't have bad taste in books, so I'll read it. And I'm happy I did. I liked it. Have a few different things that I think kind of stood out to me, both good and bad. But overall, it was
where are you feeling on rating? Because I finished it yesterday, like last night at like 7 p.m. So I'm still debating my ratings. But where are you sitting at?
I think probably around like a 3.5.
Yeah, you know, I think I'd agree with you there. I typically am a Brandon Sanderson kind of person. Like I loved Mistborn, like the original 3, like that I loved. I was reading Stormlight Archive. I haven't finished it yet. Shame on me, but and I really did like that. Like the style of writing was really good. I liked the like very big sort of epic fantasy universe. But this one to me also, I think for Brandon Sanderson, to me was just not on par with some of the other stuff I've read. And I don't know if that was because of the premise or because I wasn't really vibing with the writing style so much. Because this was, to me, very different than the other stuff that I've read by him. And I guess getting into the writing style, what did you think of the whole narration thing?
I love a good narrator. I haven't found it done in a lot of books. So it's really exciting for me to come across a book with an actual defined narrator with its own voice. And I really love the sense of humor. I like the sass and all the jokes and the commentary. I thought was really refreshing. I was a little disappointed by how fast we found out who the narrator was.
Yeah.
And kind of how that lined up with the actual story. I kind of almost feel like it would have been better if we were never given the identity of the narrator and we just let it be a voice.
I kind of agree with that. I think for me it was hard, you know, being in the book and hopefully, if you're joining us right now, you've read it, so you understand what we're talking about here. But with the book, I was kind of disappointed to have him sort of interject himself so much. Just like, oh, and I was over there losing my marbles. And it's like, we know. I'm aware, actually. But the sass was really fun, too. Like, the sense of humor in this book, I will say, was a very, very solid point. And I think even the premise, too, was like pretty good. Like I liked the spores and the magic there. I thought that was an interesting use of like the environment to make things challenging or difficult. But I do think that there were sometimes some holes or plot conveniences that made it a little bit hard to fully immerse myself. Like the designated rain patterns and like only in certain places there's unpredictable rain. And like, I mean, we all know working here, the meteorologist can't just decide that it's going to rain and know exactly when it's going to happen. So it's interesting to me that that was the route that he chose to go with for, you know, some of the things that you're like, this seems like a plot hole. And he's like, it's not though, but like it kind of was.
Yeah, I find that a lot in a lot of Brandon Sanderson books, which is kind of one of the big issues I have. I think he's a fantastic writer, and I think he has a ton of creativity, and his overall plots are good. But a lot of those plots rely on you being a really forgiving reader.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's fun, like in this book, the way it was done with humor and the way they kind of broke the fourth wall with the narrator. It made it funny, made it entertaining. And if I'm in the mood for that kind of book, I'll totally forgive it.
Yeah.
However, at the end of the day, that combined with other stuff makes it really hard to just sort of, oh, forget it. I'll ignore it. I won't think of the plot holes. I won't think of this.
Yes.
So it's tough to really kind of bring out what my real feelings are.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I think another thing for me that I really struggled with is I feel like in other Sanderson books, like I feel like in Mistborn, Lynn is a very strong character, and I had kind of a problem with Tress being a more, not reserved isn't the right word, but it felt like she was a little less confrontational. And I just struggled a lot with reading a story about this hero who seems to be just sort of like, whoa, all the time, just a little. And I like the whimsy, don't get me wrong. Like, I like a whimsical sort of thing and a kind of whimsical, carefree person, but it felt like, I don't know, she felt very one-dimensional to me a little bit, but I wasn't sure if that was just because the narrator didn't, I don't know. I was having some trouble really getting to the depth of, like, Tress as a character.
I 100% agree with you. I think it was really difficult to figure out who she was. I didn't dislike her character.
No, I liked her for sure.
And I liked the moments, especially like once she's on the ship, of our narrator kind of being like, oh, well, she actually thought. She paused, she had a thought, she asked questions before just jumping into like the next plot point, essentially. But I really wanted to know more about her emotionally, because a lot has happened to her. We're going on this big journey. We're trying to save, the boy she loves and all this. And I don't ever feel like I know her emotions. And to me, there was a lack in terms of, being able to identify with her, being able to understand her real motivations, understand what's really going on in her head. I felt like we got a really logical perspective on her, which we do have a narrator. So that kind of makes sense. But also, there were ways that you could bring in some emotion with her and how she's dealing with everything.
I'm trying to find it, but that point in the end of the book when she's walking out or almost walking out with fake Charlie, that to me could have been such a good moment to really get into her thoughts, her feelings. Oh, I can't believe I found him. This is so relieving. And then to be like, wait a minute, something's not right. Like, she looked at him, she thought he didn't have his signature eye twitch or whatever. Something like that gave her a little bit more of a like, she notices things, she's feeling something in this moment. Because it almost, not that it didn't feel like a climax of the story, but it felt like it felt like she wasn't fully like locked in on this, and it wasn't like, this was her one motivation throughout this entire journey, right? And you think like, where is that sort of like, yes, I did it, to only be like, oh no, I didn't. Like I wanted to feel that, but we didn't feel it as much with the way the narration was. I don't know. I think I just struggle in general with like a third person narrator who's a character in the story, because I like it when I can get into the main character's head and like really experience those things with them. And I think we went through a lot with the characters in general, but it felt almost like we were more in Hoyd's head the whole time than Tress's, which is kind of the point, but it was a weird perspective to be in for me. But I think that's just my opinion on things.
Yeah, I think it was a strange experience reading it. And I just don't really like whimsical books. So for me, I was trying to be extra open-minded about like the vibe of the book. But I think there's definitely a way for you to do that perspective with a narrator while still giving me the substance of your main character. And you could argue that maybe Hoyd is the main character in a sense of this, but even then, if we look at it from that perspective, I still wasn't compelled by him to feel very much. Like, I thought it was interesting. I thought the world building was interesting. I thought the magic was interesting. I thought his curse was interesting. But I wasn't compelled to care. Yes, exactly. I think, now that you mention that, I think that one book that does it well that I just recently read was The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi. And they have a narrator who is telling this story, who's kind of a character in the story, right? But it's inserted enough that it's humorous, it's fun, but it's also taking the
advantage of being able to say, oh, I'm telling this story, right? I'm telling you this story because Amina is telling me. So you get a little bit more of that emotion and that like feeling that I feel like we were missing in this one. Moving on here to some major plot points that I wanted to discuss. I wanted to discuss first Tress's sort of overall growth as a character through the piracy thing, and then I wanted to talk about Crow as a captain, like Captain Crow. So obviously first, like, I think the way that Tress got into the whole piracy thing was very interesting and fun and adventurous, and I kind of liked that whimsical nature of it. But I feel like once we got onto Crow's song and we were locked in with this crew, it got a little bit more difficult for me to be, like, it didn't feel as adventurous. I don't know.
Yeah, I struggled with the change in the sense of there's several moments where our narrator tells us, oh, Tress is acting different. She feels different. She doesn't question this anymore, and she's, you know, braver, is out there doing more stuff. But I didn't see the change in her behavior, which bugged me because I felt like I was just being told and not shown.
Yes.
And it's something I would need evidence for as a reader. I don't think she acted dramatically different from when she's on her island collecting cups to when she's, you know, learning how to work with the magic spores and spying on the captain and doing all this stuff on the ship. I just didn't feel like there was a change. I wasn't wowed. I wasn't impressed. I don't know. I didn't have much emotion with that.
Yeah.
I just wasn't.
Yeah. I kind of agree with you there. I think her journey, it felt not stagnant per se because all of these things were happening obviously, and you know, she goes from not knowing how to deal with the spores to being like this expert and like learning and whatever, and I liked that sort of stuff, but overall her behavior did remain very consistent throughout the whole thing. And so I do think that was a little bit of something that was missing here. Things that I did like though is I did like Crow's character. I thought that was a very interesting way to introduce this sort of like pirate kind of antagonist, but not the main antagonist to the story, right? I don't know exactly how I felt about the whole dragon thing in the middle. That felt to me like they were just throwing the dragon in to like throw a dragon into this story.
Yeah.
And like as a convenient way to get rid of Crow. I don't exactly know.
The only reason I wasn't taken aback by the dragon is because like within the first few pages they told us she was going to meet a dragon. I can't remember what the comment is, but there's something about her meeting a dragon. So I was like, okay, there's going to be a dragon. I thought Crow was really interesting, and I wonder if the portrayal of Crow versus the portrayal of Tress is supposed to be an example of maybe an unreliable narrator.
Okay.
Because I really wanted there to be an unreliable narrator, so maybe I'm just like wishful thinking on it. But the difference in how they are described is really interesting to me. And if Hoyt is doing all the describing, that says a lot about his perspective. And I think Crow comes off one-dimensional, but not in a bad way. She comes off one-dimensional like Hoyt is not willing to see any other dimension.
Yeah.
So I thought that was deliberate, I thought it was purposeful, and I thought it was really unique. However, when we look at Tress feeling a little one-dimensional, it doesn't feel like Hoyt is refusing to see another perspective or is kind of like has blinders on when it comes to her. It feels a lot more like Hoyt is trying really hard to make her more than one-dimensional, but it's not there.
Yeah, I think almost in that situation, I feel like Sanderson kind of pigeonholed himself a little bit with making Tress supposedly this very, you know, unremarkable, normal girl. Because I think that he played into that maybe a little too much, because obviously she's special. This is the main character of our story.
Right.
This is the hero. This is the girl who, you know, is going to travel across the sea and make it through the midnight sea and go see the sorceress, and she's going to do this big adventurous thing that not everyone can do, obviously, but by being like, oh, I'm just so normal. oh my God, I'm so normal and I collect cups. Like, I think you just get a little stuck with that. And to not sacrifice the integrity of, right, the way your character started just so that they can do these things, it almost made it so that there was nothing else to her.
Right. And the only reason I kind of tolerated that for so long into the book is because at the beginning of the book, there's that whole little like bit about like making jokes about I'm not like other girls in other stories, or how other, you know, female protagonists usually are kind of described in different fantasy books.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really funny. So I liked that, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll put up with this.
Yeah.
And then I got tired.
And then I got tired of it. I think, you know, overall I had fun. I think the premise of this book is really fun. I've been, you know, sort of drifting towards these like piracy sea stories recently a lot. I think it's because it's summer and I want to be on a boat. But it's hard to get into like a swashbuckling pirate adventure, sword fighting and cannons and all that when your main character doesn't give that sort of adventurous spirit.
Yes.
And so I think this like had a very strong start. Like it could have been so much more than it was, and I was just a little sad that it didn't deliver on that, I guess. Yeah. But there were good parts of the book. Like I think some of the side characters were fun and the humor was great.
And I don't feel like it was a waste of my time reading it. I just wanted so much more. And to be honest, even though I don't love Brandon Sanderson,
I expected
a lot more from him. And especially when it comes to that ending. Mm-hmm. The ending I felt really was anticlimactic. Mentioning, okay, we're in a setting where we're still using cannonballs, we're on ships, we're not seeing any technology, and then someone mentions a laptop. Like, I get it, like, in his universe that he's created, because this is part of his overall universe, they exist. And it implies that, yes, somewhere else, on a different planet, in a different world, whatever, people have invented laptops, and that's where it came from.
Yes.
But it didn't fit the vibes.
No.
It felt like someone trying to be funny, but no one else is getting the joke.
Yeah, I think that just really was upsetting to me. And then I felt really weird about the whole, like, again, like with the fake Charlie, that felt very anticlimactic. And then the way that the Crow's song comes through the midnight sea and they're coming to the rescue and they're going to save everyone. And it's just sort of like, and then they shot some of Tress's cannonballs. And then it took out like the entire metal army that she has waiting for them. And it's like, give me some suspense here. Yeah. There was so much we could have been working with. And it just didn't go the way that I wanted it to, and I think that's, I don't know what would have been a better ending. I haven't really thought that deep into it, but I know that to me that just wasn't as like satisfying and like, there we go, like here's this climax, this big moment, and we can resolve it.
Yeah, from a fantasy book that has pirates, like it's really hard to mess up pirates, because pirates are always cool. Yeah. With pirates and a ship and a crew, I really expected something dramatic. And I wanted it to be a little over the top, right? Like I wanted it to be kind of movie-esque. Oh, you know, like it's a narrator telling a story. So I wanted there to be those embellishments. Yes. I wanted it to be a little hyperbolic.
Yes.
And so I just felt disappointed because that's where my expectations were. Yes. And they were not met.
I think, again, because I had just read The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi, and that's another sort of pirate fantasy book, my expectations were in line with that book of it being like, this is going to be a big adventure with all these big personalities and this hyperbolic way of life and these crazy things, and Tress is going to see like, you know, they're looting and they're fighting and it's crazy, and then it kind of didn't do that, which is fine because obviously the crew weren't really experienced pirates.
Right.
But I just didn't really like, I don't know, it felt like there could have been so much more pirate,
I felt like it was a good framework, and I think the disappointment comes from that framework not being utilized. because it's like, it's right there. It's right there. We could have that. We could have all the cool pirate stuff, and you chose not to.
Yeah.
We could have this excitement. You chose not to.
Well, and like with a character who is supposedly ordinary, she collects cups, she's a very like normal person, normal life, there could have been so many moments of Tress's surprise at the way that these pirates are behaving, because they're behaving like sailors, or cursing, or being crazy, or, you know, wasting all their money, or getting wasted, like, you know, things that you know pirates for. And yeah, you're right, it didn't deliver on that pirate aspect, which I think is why both of us are a little like, oh.
Yeah, because I like reading about pirates.
They're fun.
And I don't know, I think this is the first disappointing pirate.
I think this is my first disappointing pirate. I think you're right.
Yeah.
I haven't had any disappointing pirates because normally they're cool
Right.
as heck. Like I love pirates and sailing and all of that stuff. Like that's so up my alley, and for something to not just like hit it, like, and especially Brandon Sanderson. Like for me, he is one of my favorite fantasy authors. So I just feel so like, why did he do this? Like, did his editor not tell him? Like, I don't know.
It's difficult because once again, it's not a bad book. If all you care about in the book are whimsy and vibes, and you just want a fun read, something casual, it's the right book for you.
Oh, totally.
If you care about pirates.
If you care about pirates and you're a big fantasy lover like us, and you're poking holes in every magic system imaginable, because I always am, it's maybe not going to be the best thing for you. But I do think this was like a good way to sort of try and get into the sort of more, what's it called, cozy fantasy is what people have been calling this genre of whimsy. I think that was a good way to sort of get into it there, but I'm not entirely sure if it executed it 100% for me. But I did have a fun time. Like, I had fun. Like, the humor was funny. I was reading you the quote about the weather. There's a really funny weather quote, and I'm going to pull it up on my phone here because I sent it to one of our meteorologists. But it says, "The more meteorologically inclined among you might be wondering about the planet's weather patterns and water cycle. If you're one of those whom these things are extremely important, you have my sympathies. It's never too late to develop a personality. Maybe go to a party." Like, that sort of style of humor is really fun and interesting, and it can be so good.
Yes.
And I think that's what kept me reading the book for the whole thing, is like that sort of humorous approach.
I agree. I honestly don't think I could finish the book if there wasn't that constant humor. And maybe cozy fantasy is just not for me. Which I'm not like a casual person when it comes to books.
Well, I've liked the fantasy ones, like the T.J. Klune, the like cozy, whimsical, those vibes. But I don't know, this one just didn't hit fully for me.
No.
Anyway, is there anything else that you want to touch on about this book before we kind of wrap up and talk about next month's book? Because you've already read next month's book. I have not.
I don't have anything to add about Tress, mostly because I'm really excited for next month.
I am so excited for July's book. We are reading Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. This is my copy here. I'm so excited to get started with this actually after work today. But yeah, if you want to tune in, we'll be doing this probably on the last Wednesday of the month of July, if you want to join us for that. We will be right here on Facebook and YouTube Live, so make sure you don't miss out. Anything else you got?
That's all I have.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us here on Between the Lines. We'll see you right back here next month.